Hello and welcome. Thank you for standing by patiently and welcome to the first edition of Money Control Masterclass Ideas for a New India, a platform where we try and decode the topics that matter most to you with the best experts, best voices in the world. With that, I'd like to welcome all of you on Money Control's YouTube channel, Facebook channel, Twitter channel. Let me straight away get into the topic, introduce our speakers. So this topic is something that we have been reading a lot about: cryptocurrencies. What's going to be the future in India? Will India allow Bitcoins, ban Bitcoins? To discuss all this and more, I have a very special panel of guests. Dr. Balaji S. Srinivasan, who's joining us all the way from Singapore. He, of course, is a renowned investor, entrepreneur, and globally one of the best expert voices you can get on everything crypto. We also will have former RBI Deputy Governor R. Gandhi, someone who again has been very vocal on his views on crypto to give us the regulatory perspective. We also have the founders of two prominent cryptocurrency exchanges in India, Sumit Gupta of CoinDCX as well as Nistal Shetty of WazirX, and we have Rashmi Deshpande from Khaitan & Co. to give us the legal perspective. So welcome all of you to the first edition of Money Control Masterclass. So good to have all of you here. Let me start right from the basics here. Why should India really care about Bitcoins?
I think we are not able to hear Chandra.
That's a funny expression.
I think we'll have to wait for her to rejoin.
Okay.
I think Balaji, you can just start on the whole regulatory aspect by the time she joins, because we are live already.
All right.
And I'm sure everyone wants to hear you.
All right. Well, okay. Why don't we get started from the top? So India and crypto, just crypto as a sector, how big it is, how much money people invested, scale and scope. Just to give some numbers for the people watching, cryptocurrencies, if you go to coinmarketcap.com, passed $1 trillion in total market cap, just blew past, I think, $1.5 trillion. The industry outside of the coins and tokens alone is probably at least a few $100 billion. On top of that, I was CTO of Coinbase, which is reported to be pricing at $77 billion. And you add on Binance and all the other exchanges, that's probably at least another few $100 billion. Billion here, billion there. Soon you're talking real money. There's 100 million crypto holders in every country. The whole thing is growing at a vertical pace. Crypto is really a financial internet. The internet digitized movies, books, and music. And this financial internet, crypto, is digitizing gold, stocks, bonds, commodities, and currencies, with a fundamental new innovation being a way to represent scarcity digitally. So to not just copy a file from one location to another, but to provably transfer it, to have digital scarcity. And that's what the blockchain, this data structure, has enabled. And so that's the size of it. Maybe Sumit, maybe Nishal, maybe you could talk about the size of your exchanges and the growth you've seen over the last few months.
Sure. We've got Chandra here. Chandra's back.
Great. All right, Chandra, I was handling the interview. Maybe you can
Balaji,
take over this.
Balaji, Balaji, thank you for stepping in as the backup anchor. You spoke about financial internet. I'm having trouble with actual internet.
Yes.
I blame the weather conditions in Bangalore. Not my fault at all. But, Sumit, I actually saw some really wow numbers coming in from you when you spoke about the size of crypto users in India. Because, people are under the impression that this is some niche, sophisticated thing going on. Elon Musk talks about it, and Bitcoin surges above 50,000, and now it's crossed 52,000. But give us a sense of the scale and scope in India, because lakhs and lakhs of people are actually putting their money in cryptocurrencies. Tens of thousands of crores have been invested. So give us a sense of just how popular is this in India? Has it gone mainstream, so to speak?
Sure, Chandra. I think as you mentioned in the beginning, it's quite popular. I see people talking about Bitcoin here and there, and especially in the last few months, now that Bitcoin is upwards of $50,000, I think there's very high level of interest among Indian people who want to understand more about Bitcoin. They in fact want to invest in it. And when I mentioned previously, I think the numbers are upwards of 7 to 8 million. It can even go in the range of like 10 million or so. And we are talking about a massive user base of approximately a crore here. If you compare it with the equity market size, equity market in India currently have around 40 to 50 million, like roughly 4 to 5 crore demat account holders. The numbers are precise because you can see that it's there on public. But here in crypto industry, if you look at how many people are using exchanges, how many people are KYC verified, if you combine all of those numbers and adjust for the people who have common accounts and exchanges, it will definitely come upwards of 75 lakhs. So that's the number we are talking about, which is approximately 20% of people who are using, who are investing in equity markets. So it's not a very small market. If you look at the number of companies who are already operating in this space, it's roughly around 350 companies, startups, young startups who are trying to innovate in the field of blockchain and crypto. And if you look at people are employed, at least 1,000 people who are already working full-time in exchanges and crypto companies. And if you see people who are involved in the crypto and blockchain space directly or indirectly, that would be upward of 1 lakh people. And we're talking about, over the next few years, millions of people who will get job in this space. So that's the size of market we're talking about. In terms of investments, Indians holds billions of dollars of Bitcoin as part of their portfolio. So it's a much bigger market that people generally see from outside. So as we in exchanges, we can see that happening. We can see massive level of people willing to buy Bitcoin. Thousands of people coming in every day and purchasing their first crypto. So the way the market is growing is phenomenal, and it's just rising and rising.
All right, Sumit. Thank you for giving us a sense of really what's at stake. So this is not a few people here or there. This is potentially lakhs of people who have put their money, thousands of people in terms of working there, and the number that you mentioned, over 300 startups involved in cryptocurrency and blockchain related activities. So it is going to have a huge impact. Now, Nischal, let me come to you. You, of course, are the founder and CEO of WazirX, another very prominent cryptocurrency exchange in India. There is always this doubt in minds of people, because there have been so many flip-flops over the years in terms of cryptocurrency and Bitcoins. So can you just decode this for us, break this down for us? Where does India stand today in terms of cryptocurrencies, in terms of Bitcoins, Ethereum, all the other varieties? And what is likely to happen in the next few weeks?
Sure. I think, in terms of, let's look at the numbers. What Balaji just said in the beginning of the show was there are about 100 million people who are involved in cryptocurrencies globally. And India stands at about 10 million. So that's about 10% of the global crypto ecosystem is formed of Indians right now. And I believe this is still a very conservative number because as a nation, we form a significant portion of the internet audience. So we have a long way to go. But 10 million is a large number in itself. And in terms of ownership, we've seen that Bitcoin is seen as the entry point for most Indians. whether I would say about 90% of the of Indians who jump into cryptocurrencies for the first time, they end up buying Bitcoin. So the size of crypto held by Indians is about 10 to 15,000 crores today, and it's been growing at a rapid pace. There was recently I just read a report that in about Jan or Feb this year, the stock markets added about 1.7 million new customers. And it's surprising that the crypto ecosystem has added about 1.5 to 2 million customers as well. So, but if you look at that from the market size, now the stock markets are a large market. So if you look at the rate of growth, the crypto market is growing at about 10 to 20%. It's grown in just in the last 2 to 3 months itself. So I think that's a rapid growth that's happening in India. And the reason is, if you look at what has happened in the pandemic, a lot of job losses, a lot of trouble for people in this country, and crypto investments have somehow emerged as that savior for a lot of Indians who've jumped in. In fact, it's safe to say, I think in the last 12 months, if anyone's involved in crypto, they've net, I would say, gained in their investments. So all of this put together, I think that the whole, the euphoria that you're experiencing right now is not just for, just for namesake, but there's been real returns that people have gained. Even in the job industry, for example, the crypto industry in India has been one of those few industries which has been rapidly hiring and scaling up. We've seen a lot of exchanges in India scaling up in terms of hiring, while you've heard of job losses in other industries. So it's a very positive, direction that the industry is taken, and I believe, in the next 6 to 12 months, I think this is just the beginning of growth. India will see at least 30 to 40 million people getting into cryptocurrencies in the next 12 to 18 months, I believe.
Right. So fingers crossed, hopefully, if the government allows that to happen. I'm going to come to Balaji in just a bit, but since we have R. Gandhi with us, so welcome to the show. And Mr. Gandhi, I found something that you said way back in 2015 when you were the deputy governor of the RBI. So you said digital currencies and crowdfunding have the potential to support criminal anti-social activities like money laundering, terrorist funding, and tax evasion. While we do not have any reported instances of crowdfunding in this respect, cryptocurrencies have been widely suspected to finance criminal activities. We have to be carefully and critically watching these developments. Now, in 2021, have your views changed? How have they changed? Can you give us a sense of where do you stand today, sir, when it comes to cryptocurrencies and bitcoins? Mr. Gandhi, if you can unmute yourself, sir.
Thanks, Chandra, and good evening, everybody. My views have not changed. What I said in
wow. Okay, then we have a good debate going here.
Let me explain that in the sense that whether it is Bitcoin or any type of cryptocurrencies or digital currencies, whatever we want to name it. There are several aspects of or several characteristics of these instruments. I have a problem with one particular aspect thereof, and there is another aspect which I can say that I can approve of, in the sense that so long as it is an investment proposition and an investment as an asset, if people want to deal with that, absolutely no problem. I have no problem about that. People wanting to buy it, store it, sell it, use it, whatever, absolutely no problem. So long as it is accounted, it is brought to account, absolutely no problem. The problem comes up when it is kept away from the authorities' knowledge, or it is not reported to the authorities. Whatever money that you make off through that investment, like in any other investment, if you are going to declare it, absolutely no issue. On that, no issue at all. So as an investment proposition, I absolutely have no problem in approving there's a cryptocurrencies of any variety. The problem comes up when it is used as a payment instrument or as an alternate to currency. That's where the problem comes up. If it is an instrument, payment instrument, or if it is a currency, certain characteristics it should possess, which it lacks. That is where the problem come up. I don't know, should I explain it now, or you'll be coming back on this issue later.
Just a quick follow-up question for you. So essentially what you're saying is cryptocurrency is okay as an asset, but it's not okay as a currency. But even former Finance Secretary Subhash Garg said the same thing, that when they drafted the bill 2 years ago, they saw it as a currency, and hence, they came up with very stringent provisions. But if we are just going to see it as an asset, you're broadly okay with that it can just be a store of value, something people invest in addition to other things that they invest in, like another asset class that people look at. Is that what you're saying, sir?
Exactly. That's the question. As an asset class, yes, perhaps it can, because it is two adults want to deal in a particular economic activity, and that can always be should be permissible. That I have absolutely no problem in supporting that.
Right.
And,
Balaji,
I think. Go ahead.
Yes, Balaji, please go on. I think you'll have something to add there. Please go on.
Well, Mr. Gandhi, it's a pleasure to meet you, and I think that the entire sector would absolutely take that as a compromise, because that allows everybody to keep operating and to keep creating jobs and so on in India. And so let's call that something that we can agree on and work forward on treating cryptocurrencies or Bitcoin as an asset, as digital gold. With that said, I think that there's a secondary discussion which is worth thinking about, and let me at least put this on your radar. Maybe you haven't heard this in these terms, or maybe you have, but bear with me anyway. Which is, before the internet, before 1991, the commercial internet, we had in the U.S., for example, different regulations for telephones and physical mail and movies and broadcast television. You had USPS and AT&T and NBC, and then after the internet, all of those different forms of media, physical mail and television and telephony, they all became the same thing, because you had email and you had Skype and voice calls, and you also had streaming video, and then we started mixing them together, where you have something like this, where you send an email and you click it and you do video, and we're broadcasting that, and it's all mixed together, right? And in the same way, what cryptocurrencies do is it's not just about digitizing gold, which is kind of what Bitcoin is doing, but it's about digitizing arbitrary asset types, and everything is now just debits and credits on these blockchains. So that's gold, that's stocks, that's bonds, that's commodities, also potentially currencies. And as I said, look, we're all pragmatic people. We'd be happy to take that compromise and, have it regulated and legalized as an asset. And then I hope, maybe I or others could come in and discuss, how this could strengthen India, where, other kinds of applications of this technology could also be permitted, where we work on, allowing other kinds of uses. For example, if not currencies or as an asset, for stocks. Right. So those are also other kinds of assets. You could build a stock chain, like a blockchain, but for stocks, and you'd be able to track every send and receive of these stocks. You'd have perfect stock certificates. No one would ever lose a share. The government would know exactly who had what shares. There's actually a lot of positive things that come out of this financial internet. And you may say, well, okay, all of these things can't be controlled by the government. There's ways, actually, if you work with centralized exchanges, and you have these well-lit regulated exchanges like CoinDCX, like WaziriX, like Nishal and Sumit's companies, as well as others, you would get, I think, most of what you wanted, because you'd have things where everybody who was doing it legally and carefully would come to one of these exchanges and they'd work with them. And so I think you can get a lot of the good without the bad. And it's very similar to something like email or instant messaging. Of course, that can be used for crime. Of course, criminals do use that. But you wouldn't ban the internet to stop internet crime, and you wouldn't, at least not permanently, and you wouldn't ban, I don't think, the financial internet to stop crimes with it. Instead, you target the crime and target the criminal, and I think that centralized exchanges can help you with that. So that's my point of view on this. I'd love to get feedback or thoughts, but again, totally open to that compromise of treating it as an asset. Let's start there, let's agree there, and then we can discuss other things. I think Nishal and Sumit would probably agree with that.
Right. So in 25 minutes of a Moneycontrol Masterclass, there seems to be a consensus here between the central bank and the crypto exchanges, which I think is a big positive. Why haven't you guys been able to do this in the last 3 years, Nishal and Sumit? Rashmi, I'm just going to come to you in a minute.
So, I think this thing started with the whole 2019 draft ban bill, where the whole premise was let's ban cryptocurrencies, and then we had an open debate with Mr. Garg, where he clarified about this ban being imposed on the direction of cryptocurrencies used as a currency, as a replacement to INR in India. That is where the contention was. And I think as an industry, we do agree that we have an amazing INR in our country, and UPI plays a very important role. So I don't think as an industry we are bent on focusing at the currency use case, because I think India has a beautiful banking system that works really well. But the use cases apart from currency, which is your assets or commodities or your utilities, I think that is where we would need regulations, some positive regulations, so that we can all innovate in that sector.
Right.
So I think
just hang on there. I'm going to bring in
good
Rashmi.
discussion.
Right. I'm just going to bring in Rashmi Deshpande. She represented an exchange that, first took the RBI to Delhi High Court, and only after that did this actually escalate to Supreme Court. So Rashmi, you heard out what Mr. Gandhi said. Is this a climb down? Will we see the government perhaps taking the same stance? Or do you think that, they will go ahead and say all private cryptos are banned? We are going to issue a central bank digital currency. What is the way forward here, Rashmi? What's going to happen in your view?
Okay. So when you look at the legal aspect surrounding cryptocurrency, there's very ambiguous message which is coming from the government. Okay. On one hand, the government sends out signals that they don't understand this entire Bitcoin or cryptocurrency and everything else, and therefore they are under the impression that it could be used for some criminal activities. Therefore, they want to ban it. And then right from 2017-18, RBI has been sending out signals where they are consistently cautioning investors not to go ahead and invest, or rather invest at their own risk. And somewhere in 2018, RBI had come up with a regulation, with a circular, which we had challenged in the High Court and then the Supreme Court, where they wanted to completely stop the banks from providing facilities to cryptocurrencies. Thankfully, in 2020, that particular circular was struck down. Somewhere in 2019 also, as you rightly said, that there was a bill which was probably talked about. It was not introduced in the parliament, but it was simply talking about banning the cryptocurrencies completely. And from what we understand from media reports and also what is given in the Lok Sabha, that they are again trying to introduce a bill to completely ban. What I would suggest is that from a legal perspective, and like somebody was mentioning, that it is very necessary for you to regulate this sector. See, everybody, including Nishchal, including Sumit, and everybody else is ready to have a regulation. They don't want to have such kind of a scenario where all of a sudden there is no regulation and you come in and you ban the entire thing. We are working towards it. In fact, Khaitan has gone and made representation to the government so many times to go ahead and bring in regulation. So the idea is that this is something that you should not be banning, but because look at the volumes at which it is trading. Okay, we are talking about billions, and it is not just in India but all over also. So the solution would probably be to bring in some robust regulation, so to see that these cryptocurrencies, or rather the crypto assets, are not used for something which is a unsocial activity. So it is very necessary for the government and also the cryptocurrency sector to work hand in hand to ensure that the regulations are brought in, and they are brought in such a way that the interest of all the stakeholders are protected. So that is the right solution, I suppose.
Right. I'm just going to come, thanks for that, Rashmi. I'm just going to come to Balaji again. Balaji, you started by talking about some of the innovations, some of the use cases. Now, if you look at India in the last 6-7 years, it's significantly invested in becoming a more digital society, whether in payments, whether in other things, in terms of how it transmits benefits to people, be it Aadhaar, be it India Stack, be it its payment rails. How can innovations in cryptocurrencies and bitcoins tie in with the digital rails that India already has? I mean, what possible use cases, what larger societal benefits are we going to see? Because, the obvious benefit from holding Bitcoin or holding crypto is that, X has become a millionaire or Y has become a billionaire. But beyond this, what
Yes.
use cases do you see from a societal level?
Yeah, so a really important aspect of crypto, a lot of the discussion so far in India has focused on the domestic aspect, but not the international aspect. And internationally, I think crypto could be a crucial part of Indian soft power and national security, frankly. And the reason is that India is in a unique position as the number 3 power after the declining US and a rising China. And the number 1 and number 2 are fighting and about to keep fighting. And while they fight, India can take a different path. They're going to have this, they already have this dollar versus renminbi trade war. This is going to accelerate with the digital yuan and potentially an inflating dollar. And while that is happening, India could choose a different path to instead hook its sales to crypto and rise with crypto, which is going to go from $1 trillion to 10 trillion, maybe even 100 trillion. And it becomes essentially a global, neutral, trusted platform that balances against both extremes and stands for international peace and trade, basically leading a new non-aligned movement, a decentralized movement built around cryptocurrency. In the last Cold War, it was the US versus USSR, and the non-aligned movement was in third place. In this Cold War, I think the decentralized movement will be in first place because there's many sympathizers in both the US and China with cryptocurrency and blockchain protocols and what they represent. And this is a vision, by the way, for Indian internationalism. Everybody in India wants India to regain its status as a great power. But it's not enough to just simply say India should be great. We need a specific strategy. And one thesis I have is that if India adopted crypto at a national level, at a strategic level, similar to the way that Estonia adopted the internet and made it its own, it would pay enormous short, medium, and long-term dividends. Short-term dividends, because simply buying BTC and holding it, that's going to represent something probably on par with India's gold reserves. India has, 600 tons of gold worth about $30 billion. If India bought a similar amount of BTC, even a few $1 billion today, I think it'd be very happy with that investment in 5 years. Now, medium term, you have this entire crypto industry that arises in India. And long term, you have something where India is standing for peace and trade globally, while the US and China are trying to play this game where the US and China are trying to win. India can play to win-win, right? And how would you actually operationalize this? I think step one, I or somebody like me could work with the folks at India Stack to build a crypto version of India Stack. To add a digital rupee, I think that's a phenomenal idea. We should do a digital rupee, integrate that with UPI, but also integrate a full crypto wallet that can hold the digital rupee, digital gold, Ethereum, and all the other cryptocurrencies and digital assets, all of which are just absolutely exploding right now. If you go to DeFiPulse.com, you go to CoinMarketCap.com, there's incredible work being done in cryptography, distributed computing, networking. It's really a flowering area of computer science. And so we could have crypto wallets that integrate all those different cryptocurrencies as well as other digital assets like so-called NFTs, which hold digital art, or playing cards, tokens, potions for video games. And that digital wallet would be used by Indians at home, but also abroad to send remittances and earn money for remote work. And that wallet would be also used by Indian developers like, Sumit or like Nishal or, any developer in India to build apps on this financial internet. This would also allow us to put all the stocks on a stock chain, like I mentioned, a cryptographically audited stock chain that would allow India's financial system to leapfrog and become world-class and attract outside investment because it could cryptographically prove, for example, that its finances were accurate, that its books were closed on time, that it had the reserves and cash that it says it has. And all of this, what this would do is it would be based around recognizing that cryptocurrency and digital gold are an asset for India, just like gold was an asset for India. So that's a vision for India to not simply copy or be number 3 and always looking up to China or looking up to the US, but to do something they can't do. And an analogy here is in the technology industry, every company that was not Microsoft or Apple that didn't have Windows or OS X, they got behind Linux. And that's how Amazon and Google and Facebook rose. And this could be that for India. This could also be that for Singapore and Israel and Switzerland and Estonia and every country that is not the US or China and doesn't want to get into a zero-sum trade war and get pulled into that. So this is like a global piece of grand strategy for India. I can speak at much more depth on this. I can go all the way down to the APIs and specific bytes, and all the way up to the very legitimate concerns that Mr. Gandhi has mentioned. We don't want bad actors sending money into India to cause trouble.
Right.
And there's 1,000 ways that we can use AI and other things to stop that from happening. I also taught machine learning at Stanford, and again, happy to help, happy to recruit engineers for this kind of thing. What I'm trying to say is that we can get the good without the bad with sufficient engineering, with positive will, and with a handshake between the government and industry. I mean, yesterday I spoke at NASCOM, and I mentioned to a friend, I was so impressed by it because it was as if TechCrunch Disrupt in the US was actually a collaborative relationship between the government, media, and the tech industry. And India has the potential to actually align all of these things, whereas in the US, they're at hammer and tongs. In the West, they're at hammer and tongs, right? In China, Jack Ma is getting kicked out of the country, right? So rather than have the state, like really beating down on entrepreneurs, and rather than have the state at the media at odds with entrepreneurs like they are in the U.S. and in some ways in China, we could have the whole thing integrated in a very positive some way, where we're helping strengthen India not just domestically but on the world stage. So that's go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Gandhi, I think you wanted to weigh in. Please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, there are two things. When I said that ASU as an asset, it can be permitted because there two individuals deal, they consider this is a valuable asset, they want to deal it, absolutely okay. But the problem comes up because any other type of asset, whether it is a real asset or intangible asset, there is something underlying valuable. Here, there is nothing underlying variable. That's where the trouble starts. If by any problem comes up, whoever is owning it at that particular point in time, they completely lose out. That's one trouble. The second, what Mr. Balaji was on mentioning about the use of the technology, underlying technology, how we can make good use of that. That's basically what it means is the distributed ledger technology. I have been hearing about using alternate use of this DLT right from 2013 onwards. It is now 8 years. World has not found any alternate use. This technology has been specifically developed for the so-called virtual currencies only. It is not fitting into any other use case at all. Here and there, people do claim that they have used this technology for some purpose like that. But we have not found a very credible use of this DLT across the world, leave alone India. Anywhere in the world, we have not heard about the good use of, alternate use of this DLT. That is where the trouble comes, whether India is going to get much benefit out of this particular, whether it's a virtual currency or the DLT. I have my own doubts. Yes, to limited extent, to the extent people are using it as a part of their assets. Yes, there is some employment opportunities. There are some development opportunities which people can definitely use of, but to expand it, to make it as if we are going to have a large benefit out of this technology, I have my own doubts.
So, Mr. Gandhi, I can give some examples. Go ahead. I would just say I completely understand where you're coming from.
Balaji, give me a minute.
Yes, of
course. Let me open the other panelists
please,
as well
before I
come to your response. Yep. I'll just take this part by part. Rashmi, the first part on the grievance redressal mechanism, because there is no intermediary here. We're talking about a sophisticated instrument that people may not grasp. Who do you go to if you lose money, or even if you forget your passphrase or something like that? I mean, what can be done there? I mean, crypto exchanges in India say they're compliant with KYC and anti-money laundering laws, but do we need more safeguards to protect people just when they're getting a taste of crypto and bitcoins?
Yes, I completely agree with the fact that we require more safeguards. We require more securities. As of now, as we speak, there is absolutely no law governing the cryptocurrency investors, or even for that matter, the cryptocurrency platforms. But the cryptocurrency platforms have come together and they have come up with their own internal governance mechanism. Okay, But if the government really wants to safeguard the investors, it's necessary for them to come up with some kind of law. You can't just make noises about banning the cryptocurrency and expect people to follow suit. That is not going to happen. See, cryptocurrencies, or I would rather call them crypto assets, is something that is here to stay. Okay, the only way to ensure that it is safe for all the players, all the stakeholders, is to come up with creditable laws. You can't just ban it and expect the problem to
Okay.
go.
Got it. Okay, we are getting a lot of viewer questions. I promise I will start taking them in 5 minutes. Let me just kind of get this answered. Sumit and Nischal, you heard out Mr. Gandhi. He sees very limited use cases. I'm going to come to you, Balaji, as well, because, Mr. Gandhi said DLT, there's been nothing that's really demonstrated in terms of the alternate use. But Sumit and Nischal, would you want to respond to Mr. Gandhi if you have to really make a pitch to keep these exchanges thriving, to keep private crypto thriving in India? You have the former deputy governor of the RBI. What are you going to tell him? Sumit and Nischal, you can go one by one.
Yeah. Sure. Sumit, you want to start?
Sure. So Balaji mentioned a very important point here, right? And Chandra, as you mentioned, it's beyond people making billions and millions. We are talking about trillions here, right? There would be massive positive impact in the country. One, in terms of GDP growth, right? If we are going to regulate crypto, there's going to be massive number of companies and startups who are solving problems with the new technology, with the blockchain technology. Our existing financial systems that we currently have are highly inefficient. They are not being innovated from last few decades. With blockchain coming into picture, you can massively improve the current financial systems. The remittance is one of the biggest industry, like 75 to 80 billion dollars come in the country every year. Even if you implement blockchain technology there, you'll be having the potential to save billions of dollars in fees alone, right? That's the thing that has not yet happened, because India has not opened up to all those kind of use cases, and that can only be opened up when you allow blockchain and crypto to flourish. Right now, that has not happened in the country. That's why you'll not see all of these positive changes, right? Right now what is happening is, because of this banning news, people are not venturing into the industry, and we are not talking billions here, we are talking about trillions of dollars of new addition in GDP that will happen over the years if we allow blockchain, and that is when the use cases will come, right? And when we talk about new companies, I think there are massive amount of innovation that is happening outside India. You talk about DeFi, decentralized finance. So right now we have internet, which helps people transfer information from any point to another, right? Globally, we are building decentralized finance, right? Which is a new age finance that will be built on top of blockchain. That is happening outside. We might not see that happening in India because India has not opened up to all of that. But if you look closely, there's a lot of innovation like this happening.
There is no ban on the technology. Nobody's talking about banning technology, DLT or BC.
Yeah, so I'll come to that.
There are enabling provisions.
No. So I'll come to
Okay,
that.
one by one. Nischal.
Yeah. I like because there's the fight seems to be around crypto versus the whole blockchain technology. Let's take the example of Ethereum, for example. You want to run a decentralized code, you need the Ethereum blockchain. And if I want to run that piece of code on the Ethereum blockchain, I need Ether. Now, in the absence of a cryptocurrency, there is no way that any software developer in India can run their code on the Ethereum blockchain. So now the question is, while there is a global super computer called Ethereum where anyone can run a code, if you were to block or ban cryptocurrencies in India, how will any software developer build any application on top of this Ethereum blockchain? I want to understand this. If we are talking about banning cryptocurrencies, but promoting the technology below it, if I don't have the currency to run my code on that technology, how do I even proceed as a software developer in India?
Yeah,
right, Mr. Gandhi, do you want to take that before I quickly go to Balaji?
Yeah, that means that you want to get paid, right? That payment you make it through the normal currencies. Why it has to be only? That's the technology you have to change. That's the thing you have to make it. Technology should be developed, agreed. Innovation should come on, but based on regular currencies.
So, Mr. Gandhi, I think what he's referring to is it's a little bit like trying to use physical mail to work with the email system. That is to say that the normal currencies were not developed to work with the cryptocurrency system. So to write programs like smart contracts, you actually need some Ethereum in order to pay for the gas costs of actually running those smart contracts. So you need like a currency that's native to that system. To your earlier point, by the way, I want to be very sympathetic to that because, essentially, if you're not in the space, it just sounds like lots of hype and people have been talking about it for 8 years. It's not backed by anything. It's all these crazy tech guys. I understand where you're coming from, very much so. But let me give some numbers, which may be helpful. Okay. So, for example, in the U.S., there's the NBA, National Basketball Association. They now are putting playing cards on, digital ledgers. That's now it's basically like a $2 billion company just doing playing cards. Another example is something called ENS.domains, Ethereum name system. That's an alternate login system that is a non-corporate alternative to Facebook and Google, which will allow Indians to build services that you can log into without requiring a large American company to control your login. If you go to DeFiPulse.com, you will see it going completely vertical in terms of loans, derivatives, prediction markets. These are billions of dollars in volume per day. And these are all things which are basically a financial system that exists outside Wall Street, where Japanese people, Indian people, Brazilian people, Hungarians can all just exchange in smart contracts with each other without having to go through an American middleman. And a fourth point I would make here is, as you're probably aware, 80% of central banks have teams working on central bank digital currencies. That's from Bohr et al. 2020. The BIS has a report on this, and that's actually a pretty big deal, right? And that the impact of Bitcoin, the impact of cryptocurrencies, is enough for people to think, okay, maybe the financial system does need to be upgraded. That's an intellectual impact, even if. Right? Even if you don't think that the original version was great, you have to grant that the Chinese digital yuan was catalyzed in part by Bitcoin and Ethereum and what's happening in cryptocurrencies. And it may be, by the way, in the US, the stablecoins that we launched at Coinbase. If you go to stablecoinstats.com, you will see the stablecoin that I helped launch at Coinbase, USDC, to something like $700 million in volume per day. And is basically, in my view, if you go API call by API call, is just a much more flexible and useful thing than using the Wells Fargo APIs or what have you. For example, you can't send $10 to 100 people in 100 countries very easily with Wells Fargo APIs, but I can do that by just hitting enter using USDC. So that's a very concrete daily application in the hundreds of millions of dollars, which does use distributed ledger technology, but that hasn't made the headlines. Go ahead.
Right. I'm sorry, we're getting a lot of viewer questions. I'm just going to start taking them. What will be the impact? Okay, what would happen to cryptocurrency hardware and software wallets if the government bans private cryptocurrency? Sumit or Nischal, I think one of you can take this. Nischal?
Sure.
Okay, Sumit, yeah.
Yeah, so one thing that we all need to see is even if government bans private, so first of all, the definition of private cryptocurrency is not clear because, Bitcoin, Ethereum are public ledgers, right? Second thing, because these are public distributed ledgers, you can't technically ban it. You can't ban it, right? I mean, people can always figure out some ways.
Balaji wrote quite a nice piece on why it's not possible to actually ban Bitcoins. Yeah, go ahead.
Right, so people can always put their, crypto, Bitcoin, Ethereum in cold wallets. So people can continue to do that no matter what happens. So the solution here is not to ban it because that's not practically possible. The solution is to regulate it so that investor protection is guaranteed. And then people can safely store their cryptos, and exchanges have to be regulated so that all the AML KYCs regulations are being followed.
Right. Nischal, what would be the impact of India's ban on private crypto on tokenization in general? Will we still be able to tokenize service delivery despite the trading ban?
No, I think that's a great question. And this is where the whole contention points are that if you were to ban the whole concept of cryptocurrencies, I don't think India as a country can even participate in this innovation. Forget about what other things we can do. We cannot even, it's like saying, let's ban the internet because there are crimes happening. And now you figure out something else to do to, create internet companies.
Or like
we just don't
Balaji
have a
said,
way
let's
after that.
ban cars because of to prevent drunk driving. Another
Yeah,
Exactly. And here's the thing is that, if you are banning a violent crime, if you're banning murder, you have the support of 99.99% of the population, other than the murderers, okay? And so the thing is, that's something where you have broad-based support. Here, the issue is that cryptocurrencies, among many other things, they are life-changing money. And so everybody who can will go abroad, or they will invest in overseas companies that have exposure to cryptocurrency, like Tesla or MicroStrategy, and it effectively will just be a tax on the poor. Everybody who can't do that, and those people will feel, I think with some justification, that India has sort of gone backwards on economic liberalization. If we think about the transition from FERA to FEMA, from the more stringent regulations around foreign exchange from 1973 to roughly 1998, that was something that was a huge problem for a lot of people who were trying to send money overseas. They were not criminals, they were just trying to get money back and forth into India. And FEMA, the new Indian Foreign Exchange Management Act, liberalized that, and that helped catalyze an enormous amount of money coming into India. And now we're sort of seeing history repeat, in my view, which is an understandable fear of money leaving India is going to result in capital flight out of India if crypto people can no longer operate in India, if me and all of my millionaire and billionaire friends and VC funds, we can't travel to India if this ban goes through, because our assets would be seized and we'd face 10 years in jail or something crazy like that, right? And that'd be a tragedy. That's something where I want to invest in the country. My friends want to invest in the country. Our colleagues want to invest in the country. We want to also help developers build up in the country. So this is something which, I think would be taking a step backwards in terms of India's economic liberalization. I think it'll be an obvious point in 5 or 10 years.
Right. Mr. Gandhi, is the Indian government losing a big revenue opportunity by not taxing cryptocurrency? This is another viewer question.
So the revenue comes only if you report. By definition, whichever currency, the government cannot have access to the transaction and who is holding what. In what way the government is going to get revenue out of it. That's where the whole trouble comes in. Because cryptocurrencies, by definition, is supposed to be by a government authority or a central authority, is not likely to have any information about it. Who is holding it, who is transacting it, who has bought it, who has sold it. Nothing is supposed to be knowing. Where is a question of revenue generation for the government?
So I think
do you want to
that's where that's where the regulations comes in.
I just want to wait.
Exactly.
The moment you are required to declare who is buying, who is selling, to whom, how much, then cryptocurrency loses its basic tenet of anonymity.
So I would like to add one point here.
I would just like to add in. When you're talking about cryptocurrencies, okay, majority of people here in India are buying and selling cryptocurrencies on platforms, okay. The service which is being provided by the platforms, okay, they are very well paying GST for the commission that they earn. Okay, so there is no loss of GST for that. Secondly, of course, it's not written very clearly in the income tax laws but about cryptocurrencies, but if these are going to be treated as capital gains, and they are going to be treated as capital gains, there is income tax also which is payable on that. And of course, the honest investors are paying the income tax on that. And the third thing is that when people are trading on these kind of platforms, obviously the government has all the right and all the ways of finding out who are investing, what amount, what quantity they are investing in. And if I can go back to somewhere in 2018, there was a raid also which was conducted on all cryptocurrency platforms which were existing at that point of time, where the income tax authorities had come and seized the ledgers of these cryptocurrency platforms, and from there they could very well make out who were the people who were investing and what they were liable to pay as taxes. The only thing which is not properly clear right now is under GST, would you consider it as a commodity? Would you consider it as a service? That's where the gray area is. Otherwise, I don't think so. In terms of taxing, there is too much of an issue.
Sumit, quickly.
Yeah, so I just want to make one point here. All of the concerns that Mr. Gandhi has can be very well cleared by regulating the industry, because they'll have full access to whatever the information they want. We as a industry player, we want to be regulated. We want to work as per the RBI guidelines, as per the government guidelines. If no one comes and tell us that what we are supposed to do, how can we? Right now, the industry is self-regulated. So if
Mr. Gandhi, how would you respond to
information,
that, sir?
That starts with my initial position that so long as it is an asset, it is permissible. That means that when you deal in asset, you have to keep reporting it to the authorities as either for sales purposes, that is GST purposes, or for income tax purposes. So long
yes,
as
we
that
are
is
okay with that.
that part I have already granted. That I am fully okay with that.
So I'm
The
sure they
point
were
is
wishing that you were in the RBI right now.
Yeah.
Only that it is a payment instrument or a currency. That's where the difficulty comes in, because in a payment instrument or a currency, there is an issuer who stands for the value thereof. Here, who is standing the value thereof? When somebody wants to give back the cryptocurrency, whatever he possesses, he or she possesses, who is going to give value for them? There is no issuer. Unless another party who is willing to buy. If somebody is buying, then it is a transaction. That's
Right.
okay.
Can I take the next?
That's
Right. Can I take the next question or?
Chandra,
Can I just speak to that? I was just going to speak to that
Okay,
point for
sure.
a second.
Sure, Balaji and
so,
Nishal, quickly,
yeah,
we have more questions coming. Yeah.
Sure. So
Okay,
just
okay.
one,
Yeah, Balaji, go
one
ahead.
quick, one quick response to that. So, Mr. Gandhi, as we've said, I think we're all totally willing to work with the government on, having it be an asset. So let's call that an area of agreement and so on. So everything of this is just intellectual discussion, right? To the question of whether the asset can be redeemed for something. So I'd say first, there are some digital assets that are of that nature. For example, if you have Uniswap, that is actually very similar to something which is like a stock that is that's got cash flows coming in, because Uniswap is basically the issuer of it. Second, when you are talking about something like digital gold, like Bitcoin, it is comparable to gold itself. What backs gold? Well, a few thousand years of history. It doesn't have cash flows. It doesn't have financial statements. Its main value proposition is A, seizure resistance, and B, having some industrial uses. And that's actually the same as Bitcoin. It has the value proposition of A, seizure resistance, and B, it has industrial uses like time stamping and whatnot, which are actually valuable in different circumstances. So the backing question, I think, is an important one, but one that has been answered sufficiently for millions of people to hold it. And then at a certain point, it's something where folks feel like, okay, that's enough of a value proposition to hold it. And then you go to, I think a different question which you had, which is, how does government get revenue from it? Well, the thing is that if you have these licensed regulated exchanges like CoinDCX, like WaziriX, that want to work with the state, that are happy to go and report, that will generate, files and files of data, and will do all the tax reporting and so on. That's on the table right now. They're happy to do that. And the alternative is if you just,
Right.
I'm not saying you do this,
sorry,
but
Nishal,
go ahead, Nishal, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a small thing, adding to what Mr. Gandhi's reservations were about the use case of crypto as a currency. We've seen this in Indonesia, where what they've done is they've said that crypto as a currency or as a payment instrument is not allowed in the country, but you're allowed to trade cryptocurrencies and innovate in that, and you build whatever you want. So I think where Mr. Gandhi is going is something which regulations globally are also probably in some of the countries like Indonesia, they're going in a similar direction. So I think definitely we could look at that and protect the INR's use cases while ensuring that India regulates cryptocurrencies for the right use cases that India is comfortable with.
Right. I'm sorry, we are almost towards the end of the show, but we still have a few more questions. Please bear with me, Balaji, Mr. Gandhi, Sumit, Nischal, and Rashmi. I hope that's okay. Just 5 or 10 more minutes.
Sure.
And I'm coming for Sumit and Nischal. Are India-based crypto exchanges planning to tie up with third-party bot engines? This viewer is saying, I'm referring to platforms like Altrady that are quite popular in the US. Sumit, do you want to take that quickly?
I didn't really get the question. Third-party bot engines, I would want to understand. Ideally, what we would want to do is, if that's a foreign entity that's doing it, we would want to limit it to only Indian customers. So only people who are in India buying and selling, we would want to limit buying and selling to that, so that all the questions that the regulators have are cleared, and we are able to provide as much information as possible to the regulator so that they can properly text them.
Right. Final couple of questions. Mr. Gandhi, why doesn't the government consider giving licenses for the traders where they can disclose trade history periodically and tax payment will be very transparent? Is that a workaround, or can cryptos be?
Once a law recognizes it, it is an asset, then once exchanges are permitted, exchanges will be recognizing the traders or the individuals, investors and everything. So that will be a sub-order question that will come later once it is permitted.
Right. Balaji, a specific question for you from YouTube.
Sure.
Can you tell us why banning in China didn't work out?
Great question. So the thing is that, yeah, so China tried to ban Bitcoin at the beginning of 2017. People were concerned. Chinese trade volumes were a big part of the market. They seemingly dropped off a cliff. And Bitcoin was $1,000 then, and it rose 20x that year. Ethereum has risen, everything has risen. And the reason is that cryptocurrencies are set up in such a way that they're basically impossible to ban. The text files that hold cryptocurrencies, basically it's 12 words. With those 12 words, you could hold $1 billion in Bitcoin or in Ethereum. And you can, to actually, quote, ban them from a country, you would need to magnetically erase or degauss all hard drives. You would need to stop all communication coming into and out of the country, including physical mail, where you could put 12 words on it. And you would have to stop immigration to the country. And now you really start talking about extremely excessive costs. You're not talking about for an hour or for a day, you're talking about for forever. And that would be the level that would be needed to truly stop cryptocurrency. So that's why the quote China ban didn't actually stop it. In fact, many Chinese government officials hold cryptocurrency. OTC trades are quite a big deal there. And what happened was, and I don't think India should pursue this route, with China, it became this quasi-legal thing, where if somebody had a handshake from the local government, okay, they're fine. And it was rule of man rather than rule of law, And I don't think India wants to go that route. I think, if we take this sort of asset compromise, I think that's fine. That's a V1. We will be able to build the industry. We won't have everything shut down. I think Nishal and Sumit would both go with that, if I'm not mistaken. And then, we can build apps from there, and we can show and we can legalize other aspects as the apps get proven out. I think that's probably the right approach, and that's why the ban didn't work in China, because you can't ban this technology. It's basically like banning water or banning air. It's decentralized enough.
Right. Nishal and Sumit, actually, this is coming from quite an aggrieved user of crypto exchanges. He says crypto market is open 24 hours. However, none of the exchanges have the requisite infrastructure or bandwidth to support us 24 hours. So, if one of you can take this, what's the trouble there? Are you not investing in enough IT infrastructure or customer support or whatever? Nishal, if you want to take that question.
No, I think it's a great question. And, the thing is, in rest of the world, startups in the crypto space are focusing on building the software, building the customer, support systems and stuff. In India, I think a majority of our time right now is being spent on
ensure that
preventing a ban. Yeah, preventing a ban. Every time we go to raise money, we get a news that there's going to be a ban. Investors want to pull out. Nobody wants to invest in the Indian ecosystem. We've had 2.5 years where we had no banking access. Imagine running a company in India without banking access, just so that you can support the entire ecosystem. So a large part of Indian startups are just struggling with, I would say, artificially made barriers to innovating in this country right now, in the crypto sector. And I think once we align with the government on the right regulation, then you'll see us not just 24/7. I think we'll always be there serving all our customers, and we'll only be able to focus on that. But right now, our focus is divided, and I think for some time this is going to be the case. Hopefully, we get a resolution very soon.
Right. In fact, speaking of that, what is the status? When is the bill coming? One of my colleagues in Delhi tells me it might get pushed to the monsoon session. Are you going to be camping in Delhi? Are you already meeting parliamentarians? What's your game plan? Whatever you can share on the record.
Sure. So, I mean, from the last few weeks, a lot of our time and energy is going into that. In fact, I was in Delhi this week meeting some of the people, and we are putting our heart and soul in just to ensuring that the ban doesn't come through, because if the ban comes, it's going to be a massive loss for the country. Second thing is, while all of this is happening, we are also facing troubles from the banking side. People in India want to invest into Bitcoin. They expect us that we will provide them the infrastructure so that they can buy Bitcoin, but banks are creating problems in the process. So what do? We have to solve for policy, we have to solve for banking, we have to solve for infra, we have to solve for 24/7 support. Even stock markets don't run 24/7. So we have to do all of that. We have to build technology to support. That is so much work. I think that is where, as everyone is mentioning, we need we are also startups at the end of the day, and this is the demand from people. We are not forcing someone to buy Bitcoin. This is Indians, millions of Indians who want to buy Bitcoin. We just need support so that we can continue serving their requirements, right? And that's why, I mean, right now there's another angle of ban and policy work that's happening, right? So we have to fight for that. So this, yes, we are doing a lot of work on that. But yeah, I mean, as long as we are given the support from the industry, from the regulators, we will work as much as possible so that Indians can buy and sell Bitcoin seamlessly without any issues at all.
Right. Final last 5 to 10 minutes. I'm very sorry. Balaji, there's a specific question coming for you. What is the new big application of blockchain technology according to you?
I think the one that I'm most excited about is the Ethereum name system and more generally decentralized login, because that doesn't monetize directly like DeFi or other crypto things, but it's very powerful because, for example, you could attach crypto credentials to it when people complete academic courses. So this way somebody in India could show that they could solve math problems on par with an MIT graduate, as could somebody in Brazil, as could somebody in Hungary. So you could have a crypto credential be like a crypto diploma, and they could like prove their abilities, and they could log in fact, to systems based on that. Moreover, they could bind other things to this. They could bind endorsements like a crypto LinkedIn. They could bind work history like reviews if you had like an Uber driver. And they could also host content there. It's kind of a merger of a domain name and of a username. And so this also defeats deplatforming. If you do this, it's a model where you can log into a system like a crypto Twitter. And if Twitter doesn't like you, you can just log into another system and bring all your followers with you. So this is an extremely powerful primitive where what you're withdrawing and sending between systems is no longer currency, but it's identity. And I think that, if we could do the crypto India stack, we wouldn't just be able to cryptofy UPI, we could also cryptofy Aadhaar. And we could actually make it a portable crypto digital identity that would be very powerful and it'd be world leading. And these are all technical matters that I'm happy to discuss in further detail, but that's something that I'm thinking deeply about.
Right. Rashmi, as we wind down to the last 5 minutes of the discussion, I'm sorry, I've been saying last 5 minutes for the last 10 minutes, but there are just so many questions coming in live. But Rashmi, what's the best and the worst case scenario that you are sort of preparing for? Could we perhaps see a regulation coming in, or are you kind of hoping for a scenario where, or will there be a scenario where the government bans private crypto but allows a sovereign digital currency? What kind of scenario are you building or are you preparing?
Okay, so we have been making representations to the government, and the representations are basically on the lines of course, bringing in regulations. The one biggest advantage of bringing in regulations is that, no department like the RBI or the SEBI can suddenly get up in the morning and come up with a circular to ban something like that. Okay, when the sector is properly regulated. We have been discussing this with a lot of government officials about the fact that there are regulations in other countries and how smoothly it is working, and it is also safeguarding the interest of other people. So the best case scenario, according to me, is that when we get in regulations which probably take care of the interest of all the stakeholders, and when I say all the stakeholders, I'm not just talking about investors or, for that matter, even the cryptocurrency exchanges. I am also talking about the government, because government will also stands to gain substantial amount of revenue by bringing in clarity. Because let's face it, cryptocurrencies is something, or rather crypto assets is something that we cannot ban and we should not ban. The worst case scenario, according to me, would be, I really don't think so. The government will bring in a bill to ban cryptocurrencies. Okay, that is not going to work in anybody's interest. And the government has already seen that they tried sort of banning by bringing in the RBI regulation and RBI circular, and it was shot down by the Supreme Court because it could not stand the judicial scrutiny. So the worst case scenario would probably be that the regulations take a long time to come in, and there is still a scenario of where people don't know what to do and what not to do in terms of laws. That's, according to me, is the worst case scenario.
Right. Mr. Gandhi, how can we really protect people who have invested thousands of crores in this new asset class? What would be the best way forward? Is there a middle ground? And final question to you, sir. The RBI recently spoke about a central bank digital currency. This is a step forward. How will this really work? People are very confused. They're saying, what is this digital rupee? How is it going to, work? What is it going to be backed by? Can you give us your perspective on these two things?
Yeah, first part of your question, that is, so long as it is recognized as a crypto asset, absolutely no problem. Because as I said, that once it is recognized as an asset, it can be considered as a security or a physical asset that can be worked on the legislation. Once that is done, the rest of the things automatically follow in, because standard rules and law is available to deal with an asset, physical asset, or as a financial asset. So that part is not an issue. The second part of your question relating to the central bank currency, virtual currency, the moment it comes, it will only be an electronic value, because it will have the value which is equivalent to the face value only. Whereas the expectation for across the world about the virtual currency is that it has its own value, which will be going up and down depending upon people's interest in it or disinterest in it. Whereas once a central bank issues its own virtual currency, the value thereof will be equivalent to the face value only, whatever is the face value. That it can neither be going up nor coming down. So if at all, it will work as a very glorified e-wallet or a glorified debit card type. Beyond that, it won't serve any purpose in my opinion.
Right. As we wrap, any final thoughts from all our panelists, Balaji, Sumit, Nischal, Mr. Gandhi, and Rashmi, if you guys want to weigh in?
One thought I have, Chandra, is I think as we can see, the devil lies in the definition, and right now we are all discussing about crypto as a currency or as an asset class. Everyone here in the panel understands that it should not be banned, and we are all aligned that it should be regulated. I would just request the government to at least give some legitimacy to the industry so that people can safely invest in these asset classes, and the industry gets the recognition, and then we don't face any challenges from the banking partner side in order to grow the industry. Because an outright ban will not just stop Bitcoin and Ethereum investment, it will also stop people who want to develop on blockchain technology, and if they want to build any decentralized applications. Outright ban will entirely kill the industry, which is a very bad move. So I think it should be regulated, right. And we are all aligned. We are all aligned on the same page here.
Right. So Balaji, Nischal, Rashmi, Mr. Gandhi.
Yeah,
Balaji, do you want to go first?
I'll get the last word if you want. I'll go and give everybody else go.
Okay. I'll just add in. While we all debate about cryptocurrencies as an asset or a currency, I believe that our government is going to listen to the 10 million plus users in India, and everyone wants regulation. And the industry is also not fighting for no regulation or keep us away. We are all saying that let's regulate the sector so that we can build a clean and amazing ecosystem of startups in India and keep the bad actors away. So as an industry, we are aligned with what the government wants, which is keep the bad actors aside and make sure that we can grow and bring in more progress for our nation. I think that alignment will definitely exist with our leaders as well. So it's just about waiting for our leaders to say what their point of view is, and I'm sure it's going to be about regulating.
Have you guys got any hints so far from your meetings or discussions with them?
So yeah, a lot of times everyone, the leaders we've met also in the past, a lot of MPs, they believe that India should not lose out on this innovation. So that's that's like a same thing across all of the MPs we've met. So that's what the confidence comes. I think that it's only about what's the right implementation here, because they also do not want any bad use cases or bad actors in the system. So I think with some time we'll all align. It always starts with something really negative, and there's always a middle path to regulate. And I think we'll all meet there very soon in this country.
Right, Rashmi?
So just one thing, okay, because from whatever meetings we have had with the government officials in the past few years, the reason why they are talking about ban, or they were talking about ban, is the fact that they do not understand this technology very well. And some of them are bold enough to accept to us that yes, this technology is something which is very new to us. So what should the government do is that the government should engage in a continuous dialogue with the industry players, the stakeholders, perhaps lawyers like us, to build in the regulations, so that whenever the regulation comes in, it is a very well-informed regulation, which, like I keep saying, which protects everybody's interest, and at the same time, it is very effective. So the continuous dialogue is very much required when the technology is so complex.
Right. Mr. Gandhi, you've heard different people trying to convince you about the use cases, perhaps, assuage some of the concerns you had. Are you more convinced 45 minutes later? I mean, 5 years on, your views haven't changed, but 45 minutes of talking live to 4 people, have your views somewhat changed? What are your closing thoughts, sir?
Yeah, my views are not changed, because that I remind, as I said, that as a crypto asset, it can be permitted internationally. Also, if you look at the G20 finance minister's statement, or central bank governor's statement, and others, they are looking at it as a crypto asset, which need to be regulated as recognized as an asset. That's it. That's what it looks like things are moving towards. So that is one part of it. And about the technology part of it, that is completely different. As I said, that nobody is ever talking about banning the technology, underlying technology. Nobody has ever anywhere in the world, including India, whether it's a blockchain technology or distributed ledger technology. There is no ban. Rather, if anyone would want that to be used for alternative uses, then yes, to the extent there is a link underlying cryptocurrency. That's a understanding I got from the discussion. Yes, to what extent it can be permitted, that is where, as just now by said, that by the governing authorities, whether it is government, others, will have to understand more about the technology, intricacies of the technology, and take appropriate call.
Okay, the fact that we are looking at it as crypto assets, I think itself, is a step forward. But Balaji, as you said, you wanted to have the last word. So what do you want to say?
Sure. So one other thing I just put into the picture here is there's a number of governments around the world that have regulatory policies that the Indian government could look at. Singapore, Wyoming in the US, Miami in the US, Estonia, Switzerland, Dubai. These are financial centers or technology capitals, or both, that have taken very liberal policies towards cryptocurrency, because they all understand that they can become the next Wall Street, and they can attract crypto engineers and crypto investors to their jurisdictions. So it'd be useful, as we now move into the details of regulation, where we've agreed, hopefully, that it shouldn't be banned, at least among this panel and perhaps more broadly, then I think it's worth looking at the other jurisdictions and what they're doing, and to take the best of their ideas, recognizing that not all the ideas will be applicable to a country as large as India, but that some of them would be. And these are not fly-by-night countries. Singapore certainly is quite concerned with crime, and so they don't want to allow crime to happen. And yet they have pursued fairly liberal regulations on this matter. And so, those may be worth studying, right? And that's what I'd put out there is, it's an internationally competitive environment. And it would be a shame if, India, which is looking up on so many other dimensions, which has UPI and Aadhaar and whatnot, were to make $1 trillion mistake by banning cryptocurrency or by regulating it too harshly and sending its entrepreneurs and best and brightest overseas. So that's basically my closing kind of thing. I think this is a $1 trillion decision either way. It's worth $1 trillion for India if this industry compounds within India, and it loses relatively $1 trillion for India if it goes overseas. And India is getting wealthier, but that's a lot of money, and we can hopefully achieve the policy objectives by spending less money and doing it more surgically, and we're happy to help with that.
Right. On that note, thank you all very much for joining us live. We've overshot the time by 15 minutes, but I guess once you start talking about crypto and Bitcoin, you can just go on and on. But hopefully we will have a middle ground. As Balaji said, it is a $1 trillion decision, $1.5 trillion, and growing as we speak. But hopefully, fingers crossed, we will see regulation rather than a blanket ban. But on that note, Mr. Gandhi, Balaji, Rashmi, Nischal, and Sumit, thank you very much. And all our viewers, thank you so much for joining us on a Friday evening for the first edition of Moneycontrol Masterclass. We hope a lot of your questions got answered, and we will perhaps do another edition with the same set of guests once the government's laws come in. Thank you very much for joining us live this Friday evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.